I'm David Skander.
I'm Justus Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is The Judge the greatest movie ever made?
Everybody wants Atticus Finch till there's a dead hooker in a hot tub.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made, and sometimes there are dogs.
Yes, sometimes there are dogs. You might be able to hear them in the background. And if you can, I don't give a shit. If it bothers you, just stop being jealous that we get to hang out with dogs and you don't. Fucker.
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. Did you have a funny sound?
I was just going to say objection.
Oh, okay.
Because this is a courtroom drama,
Yeah.
But it's probably good that you didn't allow me to do that because it would not have added anything to the episode for me to go objection relevance.
I'm David Scandera, joined as always by my co-host, Justus Burkett.
Yeah. The joke has often been made to me that I should pursue a legal career, because if I was ever a state Supreme Court justice or a federal Supreme Court justice, I would be the Honorable Justus Burkett.
Yeah.
Which is funny, I guess. It's less funny the 12th time someone has made that observation to me than it was the first time. But in much the same way that, like, I often get like, oh, you should marry a girl named Liberty when I was like a kid. People
that's
were like,
fucking stupid.
Yeah. Because, you know, liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I get it. My name's a word.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
You could always go by your actual first name, which we will not reveal on the podcast.
I'm a little upset that you revealed that Justus isn't my real first name on the podcast, because that's like secret information. I usually only dole that out to like close friends, but I guess mostly close friends are the listeners to this podcast.
Well, you do have the power to edit the show, so you can just remove that.
That's
if you
true.
prefer.
I'll probably just leave it in though. Yes, Justus is not my first name. I go by one of my two middle names, but nobody has literally ever called me by my first name in my entire life. My parents called me by my second name, my second of three names, since the day I was born. So while I do have a different first name, my real name is still Justus, which is what I always tell people. We don't need to go down that whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry to throw in some extra Justice lore.
That's fine. That's fine. We need personal lore on the podcast. That's what allows people to form parasocial relationships with us, which is what makes podcasts successful, is when their hosts are relatable and it feels like you're just listening to your friends.
Yeah. We're 50 some odd episodes in, and maybe that's happened yet. Maybe do you guys feel like we're friends yet?
Do you have a parasocial?
Parasocial?
Parasocial. Do you have a parasocial relationship with us? Do I need to do fucking vocal warm-ups before I start talking on this podcast?
I probably do.
Rubber
too.
baby buggy bumpers. The big black bug bit the big black bear.
To sit in solemn silence.
I'm just tripping over my fucking words. Anyway, I'd be a terrible lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd stand up and be like, objection. Anyway.
Yeah, we're going to talk about The Judge today.
Yeah.
Before we get into this movie and why we're talking about it. How are you doing?
I'm physically not great today. Like, my stomach hurts. My stummy hurt. And also I'm just like very tired.
Was it that gas station hot dog you had on Sunday?
I don't think it was the gas station hot dog, but I do think the gas station hot dog was a contributing factor to what is making my stomach hurt, which is an overall trend lately of poor dietary decisions. I don't think the hot dog in and of itself caused this. I think the hot dog was one piece of a greater puzzle, which is I've been eating lots of carbs and cheese and processed meats and not a lot of vegetables. And drinking a lot of like dark beer because autumn seasonal beer is out.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been guzzling that. And drinking a lot of black coffee like I always do, and I think it's just been a recipe for disaster on my gut. So, today specifically, feeling like not great, but mentally and otherwise, I'm fine. My body feels bad today. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Last week we're recording this on a Tuesday. because our schedules are all fucked recently.
Yes.
Last week was weird. I had definitely hit like a pretty big low point and then climbed out of that. So far, I haven't hit that this week, despite it being the start of the week, and that's normally when I hit the low point. It's the start of the week.
Well, hopefully it doesn't just hold off until later. Hopefully you just won't have one this week.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah.
But no, I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. I'm trying to be more active in the gym because the last time I said that, I was lying. It didn't actually happen. I probably went a couple times and then stopped going for another week or so.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to catch up and be more consistent about that.
Yeah.
Which has been a recurring theme this year.
Yeah. That'll help you have fewer low points too, because it turns out, annoyingly, exercise good for your mental health.
Absolutely.
Which, like, it blows that that's true, because it's not what you want to be true when you are having a hard time mentally. Like, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, there's statistics and data that back up if I fucking exercise I'll feel better. That feels annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true.
Yeah, the difference in how my morning goes between if I wake up at 7 and I'm a little tired, but I go to the gym, and I wake up at 7 and I'm a little tired, so I go back to sleep until 9.
Yeah.
Huge fucking difference.
Yeah.
Like every day that starts with me going to the gym, 9 times out of 10 is a better day than me than one where I don't go to the gym first thing in the morning.
Yeah, good habits make for better times.
Yeah.
You'd be making good decisions with how you spend your time helps the rest of your time be more enjoyable and productive. And it's fucking horseshit that it works that way, because I do just want to sleep until 9. But anyway.
But yeah, it's starting to cool down here finally, and I'm loving the weather.
Same.
So yeah, I'm doing good. The only thing I have to recommend is I've been listening to a lot of Swans recently.
Oh yeah.
And I don't want to I've been listening to a lot of live Swans stuff, and some of their live records are just hard to find. You just can't find them. So I listened to the live album Deliquescence, which is like $150 on Discogs, and it's not on streaming anywhere. There's a download link on archive.org if you're so inclined to check that out. But I was just the guy who bought the fucking CD when it came out a few years ago.
Hell yeah.
So I have it in my collection. I was listening to it, and it's great. If you want a Swans album that is on streaming, that is live, that is really good, obviously go to Swans Are Dead, which is like their last live recording before their original hiatus in the 90s. But yeah, I've been listening to lots of Swans lately. So
yes, I also have been listening to a little bit of Swans lately, but a little bit less recently than you. I had I had a few days a couple weeks ago where I went on a little Swans run. But yeah, great band.
Yeah,
love Swans.
Do you have anything else to recommend?
What do I have to recommend? I guess nothing is coming immediately to mind that I absolutely need to shout out. Because I recommended Golden Shroud by Rose Kemp on our last episode.
Oh yeah.
And my continued recommendation would be for people to listen to Golden Shroud by Rose Kemp. I was serious. I was serious on the last episode. No, yeah, I don't think I have anything additional.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lied to some Mormons the other day. That was fun.
Oh, cool.
They showed up at my door, and I was like, what if I pretended to be Mormon? Would that make this conversation go faster? And the answer is they still read scripture to me.
Oh.
And but it seemed less awkward than it would have been if I was like, go away, or no, I'm an atheist.
So you were like, hey, I'm actually already Mormon.
Yeah.
And they just decided to read some scripture with you?
Yeah, they were like, how long you been Mormon? I was like, oh, I converted and blah blah blah. And we'll see you in church on Sunday. Yeah, you betcha.
I'll be there.
And then they read
Bet your ass.
they read me something from the Book of Mormon. And one of the guys complimented my Judas Priest shirt, which I don't know if that gave me away as a fake Mormon or not.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like Judas Priest now is in the realm of just classic rock, right? Because at the time, I'm sure fucking people thought they were satanic or whatever and didn't want their kids listening to them. But I feel like now it's it's sort of the same thing as like Metallica now, where it's like I feel like there are Mormon dads who are like into Metallica now because they're like mainstream enough. I feel like I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe. Who knows? I don't fucking know the pop culture preferences of Mormons. Mormons are not a monolith. I'm sure that there are Mormons that are into Judas Priest and Mormons that are not.
Of course not. I just don't know if Elder what's his name was into Judas Priest.
Yeah,
when he showed up at my doorstep.
I always think about this with Mormons because like when they go on their missions, you just get assigned to a place.
Yeah.
And like some people get assigned to go to like Paris or like Tokyo, you know? And it's like, wow, what a dream. You get to travel the world, you get to see a new place, experience a new culture. And then there's Mormons who get like their mission assignment to like fucking Des Moines. Or even worse, there's Mormons who, like when I lived in Utah, there were Mormons who were on their mission in Utah. Because like they send them everywhere, and like even in Utah, they're like, well, there are people who live in Utah who aren't Mormons, and we need to be reaching out to those people too. So we'll also have missionaries here, and it's like that would blow so bad to be like a young
for your
Mormon,
big
right,
mission,
right? You're like a young 18-year-old Mormon guy. You're like, man, I'm gonna go out on my big mission and like spread God's word and see the world and experience new cultures and new places and have new experiences. Yeah. And it's like, no, your ass is going to fucking Lehigh, dog. Like, oh man, that must suck so bad.
I feel like proselytizing the Mormon religion in Utah, that should just be like what they're doing on weekends, you know, like.
Right,
it's just like, a regular occurrence.
Don't you have this covered? You don't need me here. Let me go to, I don't know, Cape Town or something. Like, let me leave the continent.
Yeah.
Anyway, Toronto even.
That's enough of that. But just, I don't know. I don't know if that was a sociopathic thing to do, where it was like, I'm just gonna lie to these people.
I think it's a fun social experiment.
Yeah. All right, we're talking about The Judge.
We're talking.
From the director of Wedding Crashers.
This guy's filmography is insane.
And the Eurovision movie with Will Ferrell.
The Eurovision movie with Will Ferrell that came out in 2020 because the plan was to release it in conjunction with the Eurovision Song Contest in 2020. But then because the pandemic happened, they canceled the song contest and they were like, fuck, now we just have to release this movie anyway. Like they were really banking on that tie-in with the actual like televised song contest, and then it was like, okay, I guess we have to shit this out on streaming and hope everybody forgets about it because it totally doesn't work if it's not running in tandem with the song contest.
Yeah, this is from David Dobkin, The Judge from 2014, directed by, I just said that his name. It stars Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall, and everything else in this guy's filmography is like poop and pee jokes, which is not this movie is not immune to that. This movie opens with Robert Downey Jr. pissing on David Krumholtz,
which is it's insane. This movie's insane.
Okay, we haven't talked about this.
Yes, you and I have not said any words to each other about this movie yet.
This movie is one of the most insane things I've seen in a while.
What in the flying fuck did we watch? I don't understand what the point of this movie is. If I were to pose the question to you, because my answer to the question I'm about to ask you is I don't know. What do you think the theme of this movie is?
We're trying to get an Oscar.
Yeah, right? Right? That's it. It has no theme.
I feel like this movie is, if you input all of these prestige Oscar bait drama, cliches into an AI and had it generate a script.
Yeah.
But the AI sort of gets things wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we have the plot of the big city guy coming home to reunite with his small town high school sweetheart. And then the AI like wigs out and it's like, but then he makes out with his maybe daughter, but she's actually his niece, and we're just gonna pretend that we're okay with that for the whole movie. It's like it is. This movie is about a billion things at once,
and also nothing.
Yeah,
And also, it's about nothing.
And the tone is all over the fucking place.
Yeah, it really is. So, like, we're just going to put the biggest pin of all time in the whole plot that you just mentioned with RDJ making out with his niece, because we'll have to return to that in detail. But before we get into anything too deep, I just want you to tell our listeners why we are talking about this movie, because I think this is hilarious.
Justus, we have to find out if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Yes.
There's, 300,000 movies made since Thomas Edison,
I understand the point you're trying to make.
Maybe the judge is it.
We have to get to the judge sometime, but
Yeah.
why now?
So, you and I are both fans of the podcast Blank Check with Griffin and David.
Yes, a much better and funnier movie podcast.
Way fucking better than our show.
Way smarter and funnier hosts.
Much more talented,
Yeah.
actual film journalists and people who have experience in the film industry.
Yeah.
Anyway, they originally started back in 2014 or 2015 as a show called The Phantom Podcast, where the joke is that they reviewed The Phantom Menace every week. They did 10 or so episodes where they just reviewed The Phantom Menace and they watched the movie over and over and fixated on these little things here and there. And they kept bringing up the judge. In fact, I went back to listen to the first Phantom Podcast episode. They bring up the judge within 10 minutes of that episode starting. They plant the seeds of the judge way back in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
They kept bringing it up. And honestly, I can't remember any of the jokes that they made about it. I went into this movie basically blind, other than just knowing about it from them, because I completely forgot all the jokes that they made. And then after they finished The Phantom Menace, they decided that they were going to do an episode on the judge and then move on to Attack of the Clones. So I picked this because I've been wanting to see the judge so I can listen to that podcast episode, and I came across a copy that a friend of the family was selling for $2, so I fucking grabbed it. And otherwise, I was like, I need to watch this, or it's just going to sit on my shelf for ages.
I think this might be the first time in the history of podcasting, in the history of movie podcasts, that the hosts have covered a movie so that they can listen to another podcast episode about that movie. It just feels like we are doing, podcasting Inception.
I just want to know what Griffin has to say about the judge.
And I understand that. Griffin Newman is fucking hilarious, and I also am going to go listen to that Blank Check episode after we record this. I didn't listen to it in advance of this because I didn't want to unconsciously steal jokes.
Of course not.
But yeah, I just think it's fucking hilarious that's why a slot in our programming is basically let's listen to the Blank Check episode
and
this movie.
with the Pride and Prejudice last week, which the Podmaster picked for us. We got to,
we're killing time before Halloween.
Killing time for Halloween, so let's just pick some shit that we won't talk about otherwise. And one of the only requirement really that I've at least had for a movie to appear on this show is a movie that's interesting to talk about.
Yes.
Good, bad, somewhere in the middle, something that's interesting to talk about.
Yes.
And I was worried that we weren't going to have anything to say about this movie.
Oh, buddy.
I think I have. I don't know if I'll be able to organize my thoughts into coherent sentences, but I have not stopped thinking about this goddamn fucking movie since I watched it last night.
Oh, yeah. There is not going to be a shortage of things to talk about in this movie. Because as you mentioned, it opens with Robert Downey Jr. pissing on David Krumholtz, whose name I unfortunately could not remember. Sorry, David Krumholtz. Loved you in Oppenheimer, but in my notes, you're the guy from Numb 3ers. You ever watch that show, Numbers?
No. Oh, no.
They style the title of the show Numbers, but the E is a 3, so it's Numb 3ers.
Was that one of those cop shows or detective shows where it's we need another new gimmick here?
Yes, and the gimmick on that one is they need a mathematician. So he's I think he's like a college mathematics professor, but his brother works in the FBI, and so his brother brings him in on all these cases where his fucking math brain can help solve the case or whatever. And he's kind of awkward, sort of probably problematically autistic coded. Put another pin in that, by the way.
Oh boy.
And yeah, so the thing is he's dealing with all these tough as nails cops, and he's kind of an awkward nerdy guy or whatever. But David Krumholtz is the lead in that.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of that show because it was on when I was eating dinner with my family as a child. Anyway, yes, so he pisses on him, and it's crazy. It's crazy that this movie opens on, like, establishing shots of the Chicago skyline, and then Robert Downey Jr. at a urinal, turning to the side. We see a full piss stream, and he just pisses on David
That's
Krumholtz.
not the last bodily fluid that we'll see in this movie.
Oh, no. There are, apart from the shit, which...
So many pins that we're putting in things.
Apart from...
This is going to be wild.
Apart from the full-on diarrhea set piece in this movie, there are no fewer than 3 on-screen vomitings in a legal thriller. And only one of them is the guy who has cancer. Like, the other 2 are just some other guy puking. You see so much fucking puke in this movie.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Jesus H. Christ.
Yeah.
So the plot of this movie, because there are a billion things happening in this fucking movie.
Yes, there are 8 plots in this movie.
The overarching thing here is Robert Duvall is this small town judge who has a bit of a reputation.
Yes.
His son, his estranged son, Robert Downey Jr., comes back home for his mother's funeral, and while he's there, Duvall is accused of murder, and Downey has to defend him in trial.
Yes.
That is the overarching plot of this movie.
Yes.
However, this movie is 140 minutes, and there are like 12 other things going on.
It's unconscionable to me that this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long. Like, I loved a lot of the insanity in this movie, sort of from an ironic perspective. I had a fun time with how weird and crazy it was, but I will not say that I was never bored, because I certainly was bored at points watching this movie. It's about 40 minutes too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, oh man, like you could take a fucking red pen to this script and just lose full pages.
There's
and the movie would be fundamentally improved.
Plots, entire characters that should be excised entirely. Like, for example, Jeremy Strong as the younger brother Dale, who is very problematic. This is a very problematic character in this movie. And it's like, hey, you know how his relationship with his older brother is kind of like the important thing, because it like is part of the whole event that drove him and his father apart. Yeah, we can keep Vincent D'Onofrio. One brother is enough. We don't need a second brother who has some kind of autism spectrum thing that is being represented quite insensitively at points during this film.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think Jeremy Strong is going like full Simple Jack.
No,
but the movie just doesn't treat it with any sort of respect, really.
It's less his performance and more the script.
Yeah.
Because so many times a line from him not understanding a social situation or some kind of nuance in the scene that's happening is like a button on the scene that's supposed to be a joke.
Yeah, it's the joke, and then we cut to the next scene.
And like every single time I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, is that this character's entire function in this movie is for his disability to be comic relief? Because I don't know, movie from 2014, if that's what we should be doing. But yeah, I don't think Jeremy Strong is like doing an offensive performance. I think it's an offensively written character.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when Dale first appeared in the movie, I did write down, oh sick, his brother is Mark Lewis from Peeping Tom, because he's carrying around the like 60s handheld film recorder or film camera, right? That looks like the one from Peeping Tom. And he's also costumed like the character of Mark Lewis from Peeping Tom, and sort of his performance is not unlike Mark Lewis. And so at multiple points in this movie, I just kept imagining, like, what if this guy is secretly murdering women while this whole movie's happening? And every time Dale's off screen, He's like pulling his tripod knife out and putting that mirror on the camera, watching the fear in a woman's face as the light leaves her eyes.
So there are no less. I mean, every time a new character in this movie was introduced for the first 45 minutes to an hour, I was like, oh, and you're here?
Yes.
Vera Farmiga,
Uh-huh.
Vincent D'Onofrio, Jeremy Strong, fucking Dax Shepard,
Yep.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Billy Bob Thornton,
But-
who gets a character reveal shot as if like it's Thanos in being revealed in the Avengers.
Yeah.
Like it's like the camera fully pans around. There's like a dramatic lens flare, like push in, and it's like Billy Bob reveal.
And he looks just like he did in season 1 of Fargo
Correct,
as
yes.
Lorne Malvo. So the whole movie, I was like, this movie would be much more interesting if Billy Bob Thornton was just Lorne Malvo's next, alias for whatever case that he's doing.
He just became
his
a
murder plot.
prosecutor.
His name is Dwight Dickham,
Dwight Dickham, yes.
which is a fucking insane,
very funny name.
stupid, made up bullshit name that sounds like something that Lorne Malvo would get from his, whatever the crime syndicate that he works for. He'd get the wallet in the mail and says, "Oh, my name is Dwight Dickham and I'm a lawyer."
I'm a state prosecutor for the state of Indiana. Yeah.
Everyone in this movie is doing a good performance. They just have everyone has a thankless job in this movie unless your name is Robert Duvall or Robert Downey Jr. And even then, Robert Downey Jr. is just doing Iron Man.
Yes.
It's just, what if Iron Man was a lawyer?
Yes. And also, like, I kind of think Duvall's character is the only one that's even half well written, because like RDJ's character in this movie, the biggest problem I have with him is it's like, yeah, so he's like doing the Iron Man performance, but also the writing, it's like, this is the main character of this movie. He's the one that's supposed to experience some kind of change, have some kind of arc, and the arc is so half-baked. I kind of am like, did this guy learn anything at all from this? I guess he learned that, like, he loved his dad after all, or whatever. But, like, that's not an interesting arc. And they sort of, like, try and have him do the dad arc in the middle with his annoying fucking kid. And it's like, that kind of doesn't work and goes nowhere. And, like, it's just, like, I feel like the role is big, but it doesn't have a lot of, like, meat to it.
No, and
you know?
I think all of the writing and the dialogue that he's given reads to me as just like stuff that they threw out of the last Iron Man script or
Yeah.
something. Like it's
Except with like way more profanity.
just so many. It's like he can say fuck now, but he's still doing the same sort of jokes.
yeah.
And again, there's so much happening in this movie that he doesn't really get. No character in this movie gets an arc really to latch onto, because it's like, okay, so we have the main sort of legal drama that's taking place.
Mhm.
We have the father-son reconnecting. We have the son reconnecting with the small town and his family.
Yeah.
We have reconnecting with high school romance. We're going to throw in a terminal illness. We're going to throw in a brother who has
The fucking-
mentally disabled.
When they revealed that the other brother's thing is that he was a star baseball player and then he had an injury that prevented him from going into the major leagues, I literally like stood up from watching the movie and like walked around for a little bit, because I was like, literally the one trope that I thought this movie was not going to pull out of its bag of tropes and play, it just played. And now I think all of them are on the table.
Yeah.
Every single Oscar drama trope. It's all on the deck has been stacked. And I'm like, what are we gonna do with all these? There's no way that we can resolve all of this in a satisfying way. And yeah, I was right.
There's just so much stuff happening here that there's no characters to latch onto emotionally, and there's no compelling character relationships. Like,
Yeah.
you would think that the relationship between Downey and Duvall is the heart of the movie, and in a way it is, but even then it feels so half-baked and underdeveloped, and we're just given so much exposition to this backstory that they have that we don't see, which is fine, but it's all delivered like, 35 years ago when I sent you to juvenile hall, because it's just so plainly laid out for the audience, without any sort of artistry or creativity or leaving anything to the imagination.
Yeah, the problem is because this movie has like 8 plots. Of the 2 hour and 20-minute runtime, like about 2 hours of it total is exposition for all the various plots it has.
Yeah.
People are always just telling you shit that happened or is happening or is about to happen. And it's like, it becomes almost impossible to follow what's going on at points, because it's like, we were just talking about, how Robert Duvall has cancer, and now we're talking about how there's new evidence in his murder trial, and then Robert Downey Jr. might have fingered his own daughter, which they say made out in the movie. But then there's the moment that they specifically did not edit out of this movie. They left it in the final cut, where he's driving home with his 2 brothers after making out with her at the bar, and Dale comments about how his hand smells like Play-Doh. And I'm like, that is explicitly telling the audience that he fingered this woman. And then, like, an hour later, he's like, oh, yeah, maybe that was my daughter. and then after that, he's just like, oh, made out, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, fucker, you cannot take those Play-Doh fingers back. I heard that shit. I know what you're talking about.
So we'll get through this movie one way or another. We'll figure it out. Downey's a big shot, asshole lawyer.
Yes. In Chicago, he's a defense attorney. He defends rich people who are guilty, basically.
Yeah, he's successful as hell. He's got a nice house, got a nice car. In the scene where he pisses on David Krumholtz, and he basically lays out everything we need to know about him in 5 minutes, because the writing in this movie is just tell, don't show. He's like, my wife, I think he said this. My wife has the ass of a high school volleyball girl.
He absolutely did say that, David, and I know that because I wrote down in my notes, maybe don't compare your wife's anatomy to a high school student. Just as a general rule of thumb, I think red flag if a guy is comparing his wife's anatomy to a minor. Anyway, yes, he does say that.
It's my jaw dropped multiple times during this movie.
Yeah.
So he's getting divorced from his aforementioned wife. He has a relationship with his young daughter, who is just another delightfully awful, precocious child.
Yeah, she's really annoying. No offense to this child actress. I'm sure she's a lovely child or whatever.
She's Jacob Tremblay's sister.
Okay, well, so no offense to the Tremblay family or this girl specifically, but what an annoying fucking character in this movie. What an insufferable presence in this film. Anytime she opened her mouth, I was like, God, I want this scene to be over. Especially later on when she visits him in Indiana, but I guess we'll talk about it.
He gets a call that his mom has died.
Yeah.
So he goes home to
Carlinville. Your classic Oscar drama setup, baby. Mom died in your small hometown, so now you got to leave the big city and, interact with all your family members that you're estranged from or whatever the fuck.
One of the shots of him driving to Carlinville is he's driving through a cornfield or whatever, and there's no one else on the road, and the camera pulls back, and and he's driving like a Ford. It looks like a fucking Ford commercial.
It does look like a Ford commercial.
It's just like, look at the all brand new Ford blah 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 available now, and it's one of those like the dystopia of car commercials where no one else is on the road.
While you're mentioning this movie bearing resemblances to commercials, we talk a lot about good scores. In movies on this podcast.
What'd you think of the score?
I think we are obligated to point out when an egregiously bad score makes an appearance on the podcast, since we've talked up so many good ones, and boy oh boy does this score suck a bag of donkey dicks.
This score sucks ass.
It's
like a horror. It's like a Hallmark Christmas movie. Just like bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Just like
it reminded me of pharmaceutical commercials.
Yeah,
like literally, I could picture this exact music playing while someone is like reading side effects for a pharmaceutical drug in like a sped up voice. Like it is literally like ask your doctor if Ubrelvy is right for you core music. It fucking blows chunks. It sucks so bad.
The guy who composed this, the composer, that's what they're called, not
Yes.
the guy who composed the score. The composer of
The
this
music
movie,
man.
I don't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
He's done a couple Bond scores. Like, this guy has a career and has made good scores.
Yeah.
This is just not one of them.
I think he just phoned this one in, honestly.
And this is also shot by
he read the script and he was like, I don't know what this movie's about, so here's some fucking plinking around on the piano, I guess.
the cinematographer for this movie is Janusz Kaminski,
Mm.
if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
He's worked with Spielberg a ton. Like Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, Crystal Skull. This guy's been like Spielberg's guy forever, and he shot this movie. And I don't think this movie is ugly or poorly shot. There's just nothing about it that is particularly visually stimulating.
Right.
Other than the fact that it seems to entirely take place in houses where no one has turned the lights on. It's like the middle of the fucking day in these dark, old-timey small town houses, and just no one's got the fucking lights on.
To me, the aesthetic is basically just like a Netflix original TV show.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like inoffensively sort of bland, decently composed HD digital photography.
Yeah,
right?
entirely competent, but nothing special.
Right, exactly. Where I'm like, okay, this is like the camera isn't telling me anything about the emotion of the scene or the themes that this work is supposed to communicate, but it's doing a good job of putting an actor's face on screen, you know? Yeah, no, I do think the editing in this movie also kind of blows, to be completely honest with you. Like, there's a lot of, like, weird, like, fade transitions and stuff that I
that's a
found
good
kind of
point.
jarring.
So he goes home.
Yeah.
And we're introduced to the various characters of this small town.
Yes.
His older brother's played by D'Onofrio, Vincent D'Onofrio, who I love seeing and stuff, even if he's not always great.
Vincent D'Onofrio, I think, is fine in this movie, but I agree. Like, I was just happy he was there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh hey, there's that big lug. I love seeing that guy.
There's Gomer Pyle.
And then his younger brother Dale makes his first appearance, played by Jeremy Strong. The first scene where we see Robert Downey Jr. in Carlinsville is when he's at the mom's wake, and he's like holding her hands as she's laying dead in the casket, and then we get a POV shot from Dale's fucking 60s handheld film camera, like sneaking up behind Robert Downey Jr., whose character name is Henry or Hank. He's like sneaking up behind Hank, and I was like, immediately, even before I met Jeremy Strong, was thinking Peeping Tom, just because of the aesthetic. And then you meet him, and it's like, no, yeah, I believe this guy is filming women's deaths. But in that moment, it's so funny because RDJ turns around and like looks all happy and surprised to see him, and you have no context on Jeremy Strong yet, so it is just like the most bizarre like tonal shift. Where it's like, oh, I'm holding my like dead mother's hands, and then it's like Michael Myers POV sneaking up behind Hank, and then he turns around and is like, oh hey you, and I'm like, what is happening? I feel unmoored from any reality.
Yeah, and the movie occasionally intercuts like that old school Super 8 or whatever 16 millimeter footage as like dream sequences sort of, or to establish some sort of emotional tone of a scene. Like I think earlier when he gets the news that his mom died, he has some sort of flashback to his childhood in that aesthetic.
Yeah.
So when it shows up here, it's weird because
it's in the present.
It's in the present. You have some context for it, but it's like you still don't really know what it is. And again, by the end of this movie, there's so much emphasis put on this plot line, but it doesn't really go anywhere or do anything thematically for the film.
Yeah.
That I don't know why we spend so much time focusing on Jeremy Strong and his camera and his reels of film.
This character is completely worthless to the movie overall. Like I literally think if you cut out every single time Jeremy Strong was on camera, it would like not affect the movie materially in any way other than it would be shorter. and a little better probably. So we meet the two brothers, and then we also get introduced to Robert Duvall. And Robert Duvall's character introduction is him like adjudicating a fucking civil trial where like a guy's not paying his child support or some shit, and he does this crazy thing that I don't think is how court works, where he's like, give the bailiff your car keys to your new truck, and then is like, now give the keys to the fucking plaintiff, and ma'am, you can go fucking sell his car and take the money. I'm like, I think there's like paperwork and shit. Like, I don't think it's just like, well, give her the keys to your new truck. You're walking out of here, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure, and this is a thing that continues throughout this movie. That is not how the legal system works, is a thing I was thinking a lot in this movie.
Yes. I feel like Legal Eagle on YouTube. He should do a review of the judge, because he does that sometimes, where he'll like, here's a scene from Better Call Saul, or here's a scene from Law and Order or something. Right. Because I don't think this movie, I think the fundamental problem with this movie is the screenwriters wanted to make a legal thriller, and they probably read like half of the Wikipedia page on the U.S. judicial system.
On the Indiana state court system.
And they were like, this is fucking boring. And they just filled it in with all this other shit, because it's the core mystery of the film is interesting, like as a premise, but the movie doesn't seem interested in exploring it at all. As far as, you know, the ins and outs of this case where Robert Duvall runs over somebody. You know, it's not interested in exploring the evidence and differing sides and differing opinions and the moral implications of this event. It's just like, it's just kind of there.
The movie kind of doesn't even seem interested in whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
You know, or whether you, the viewer, think he did it or not. It's sort of like, well, the guy died and he was an asshole, so he deserved it, I guess. Anyway, right?
Yeah, that's really all it boils down to at the end.
And then, like, that's the attitude that the movie takes, and I'm like, no, like, show me more of like the evidence and shit. Like, I don't know. But you're right. I think that they just didn't have like the wherewithal to like explore the legal aspect of this in a way that was satisfying. So instead they were just like, I don't know, fucking put in another scene where Robert Downey Jr. makes out with Vera Farmiga.
Yeah.
And also to go back to this civil suit that he's adjudicating, how would you feel, David, if you were being sentenced in court and the judge just started doing his type 5? Because that's what Robert Duvall does here. He literally just starts roasting this dude because the guy's like, this isn't fair. And he's like, oh, you want fair? Go to the Indiana State Fair. Drive north of Indianapolis. See a hog bigger than you ever seen, or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, excuse me, can we have some decorum here, please?
But to do that, you'd need to have a truck. Courtroom erupts into laughter.
Right. Literally, he's like doing a stand-up routine. And I was like, I don't know if that is the place or time for this, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. The scene ends with there's a special attention paid to a moment where Duvall forgets the name of his bailiff that he's worked with forever.
Yes.
This will come back as the if the shoe fits, you must acquit of this movie. The final piece of the puzzle to this case.
I believe it's if the glove fits.
Oh, is it the glove?
It's a glove.
Yeah,
O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah, you're more of a true crime freak than I am, but you know what I mean.
The idea,
the shoe fits.
I like the idea, though, that O.J. Simpson's like putting on a
Cinderella
a shoe that's too small. Yeah, right. Oh, the shoe doesn't fit. His carriage turned into a pumpkin, and somebody else killed his wife. Yes. It is insane that it is Chekhov's chemo-induced dementia in this movie, where it's like, oh yeah, like he doesn't remember this guy's name because I guess that's a side effect of chemotherapy. And for some reason, everyone takes that as definitive proof that he could not have committed premeditated murder. And also, I'm like, maybe he just forgot this dude's name. Like, maybe he's just an asshole and, like, just doesn't remember this guy's name that's worked with him for 22 years.
Yeah, I mean, at what point, there are times where I've worked with someone closely and I've met them multiple times and I'm like, I don't know your fucking name. It's way too late for me to ask you.
Also, I feel like the optics of a white judge who's been on the bench for 42 years, not knowing a black bailiff's name who he's worked with for 2 decades, play differently in 2024 than maybe they did in 2014. Although 2014 was already a little late for that.
Yeah.
Especially because this bailiff is like the only black character maybe in the movie.
Yeah, I mean it's a small town in middle America.
Right. And so it just seems very interesting that like the one black character with a name is the one whose name he is incapable of remembering.
Yeah.
It's just an odd choice.
And Duvall's definitely characterized as like a cantankerous old man with like
who admires Reagan.
with these old-timey American values. So if there's room for maybe some sort of commentary there.
Yeah. All I'm saying is if I was on this jury and I saw that bit at the end where he's like, "What's this man's name?" and he's like, "I don't know." If I was a juror, I'd be like, "That guy's just racist."
Basically.
Anyway.
Downey and Duvall have an estranged relationship. We know this basically from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like there's a small reception after the wake, and Duvall just shakes his son's hand instead of hugging him.
Yeah.
And Downey consistently calls him the judge. It's not dad, it's the judge.
Yep.
Imagine if your father specifically told you to refer to him by his title.
By his job title.
His job title? Yeah.
Yeah. So they like have some spats here early on when like RDJ's like staying in the house or whatever, and he's like I'm gonna be out of here in the morning or whatever. And this is when like Duvall goes out for a drive. He like goes to the corner store to pick up some eggs or some shit, and goes out in the car, and then fucking Downey and D'Onofrio and Jeremy Strong go to a bar. And this is where Robert Downey Jr. First Robert Downey Jr. Defeats a gang of townies with lawyer speak.
Yeah.
Which is fucking nuts because I was like, literally try that at any like small deep red town in America and they will just literally beat your ass anyway.
They just show up and start bullying him and calling Jeremy Strong's character the R word.
Yes.
And for no fucking reason.
For no reason other than these are like disgusting hillbilly townsfolk, and we need to have like some manufactured conflict in this movie.
And also he's met up with Vera Farmiga at this point.
Oh yeah.
Who again, when I saw her in this movie, I was like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Also, she kind of looks like Patricia Arquette in this movie.
This movie is trying to portray Vera Farmiga as the small town diner waitress that you banged behind the dumpster one night and she gave you the clap.
Yeah.
I don't think that works for Vera Farmiga.
No, her teeth are too nice.
They even give her like an arm tattoo.
Give her like a one tiny shoulder tattoo to be like, look, she's like white trash, and it's like, I don't know, I'm still looking at Vera Farmiga.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they've met up already and kind of had their like, she's like, oh, nice to see you. Like, it's been a really long time or whatever. And they're like kind of flirty or whatever.
Yeah. Old high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
And then at that bar where Downey defeats the townies.
Ooh,
that's a fun sentence.
Defeats the townies with lawyer logic.
Lawyer speak.
Yeah.
The bartender there is a young lady, and they vigorously start making out in a phone booth.
Yeah. And he definitely canonically fingers her.
Yeah.
Due to a line of dialogue that I've already referenced.
Yeah. And again, the movie spends a good portion of its runtime devoted to the mystery of, is this an illegitimate daughter that he had with Vera Farmiga?
Yes.
And the answer is no, but she's definitely his niece.
So again, in this Oscar bait movie,
were you expecting this to turn into Old Boy?
No, absolutely.
Spoilers for Old Boy.
Spoilers for Old Boy. Although Old Boy, he would have been a lot happier if it turned out to be his niece. I mean, not that that's okay, but it is better.
Yeah.
It's better. It's still not great. Yeah, no, I was not expecting this Oscar baity courtroom drama starring esteemed actor Robert Duvall in like the co-leading role. To drop on you like 8 minutes from the end. Oh yeah. And by the way, the hero of this movie canonically finger banged his own niece.
Yeah.
As part of this movie. And also, the movie just kind of shrugs about it and is like, okay, well, that was weird.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. was just, knuckle deep in his niece, and we're just going to play it off as a joke. And
he's
also
like,
her
and he's
mother's going to be
basically
cool
like,
with it.
Right. Well, no, her mother never finds out. He never tells her.
He doesn't?
He never tells her.
Oh my God.
Which is a fucking insane thing that this movie just leaves open. And then at the end, she's basically like, hey,
I forgot about that
come by
entirely.
the diner after we close and I'll fucking bang you. I'll save you a piece of pie. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Right? And it's like, so you're just going to have a relationship with this woman?
That happens.
And the whole time you're
That
gonna...
happens at his dad's funeral.
Yes.
She's like, come by later and we'll
she's
have
like,
some hanky-panky.
By the way, after you put your dad in the ground, you can come here and take me to fucking Pound Town. And the movie sets it up like he's gonna like be in a sort of relationship with her. That's where we leave things with them. And I'm like, the whole time, I'm just thinking about the fact that this woman still does not know that this man fingered her daughter, who is also his niece. It's nuts.
Yeah. So after the funeral for his mother, Downey's going back home. He's had a few spats with his dad.
Yeah.
His dad let slip to his brothers that he's getting divorced because it was really funny to hear Robert Duvall say this. Lisa played hide the pickle with somebody else.
Yeah. A lot of the lines in this movie that are kind of like weirdly crass and like vulgar humor don't work for me, but the ones that Duvall delivers kind of do. Like, it's very fun to hear him saying some of this shit.
It's very fun to hear 100% of the dialogue in this movie. I'm not gonna act like it works.
Oh no,
I'm not gonna act like even some of it works.
No.
Like the amount of stuff that actually works in this movie is very, very limited. It's a very short list for me.
Yeah.
But this movie, again, like, it cannot decide what it wants to be because there are points where it is trying to be dramatic and emotional and deal with mature themes of reconnecting with family and
legacy and
legacy
morality
and the morality. And then other times it's like, Robert Downey Jr. is fucking pissing on David Krumholtz and talking to doing the Iron Man shtick, and Robert Duvall saying fuck and shit, and it's just none of it works.
I completely agree. I think like the thing is not that you can't have like kind of crass comedy mixed with more serious dramatic stuff. Like, I think that can work. I think the issue in this movie is that because it tries both and both don't work, it draws your attention more to how much the movie's not working, because it's not trying one thing and failing, it's trying a bunch of things and failing. Right?
Yeah, it's a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah.
Because if it wanted to have comedic moments to lighten the mood, it would need contrast, and it would need good writing. It would need a compelling emotional arc to this story.
Yeah.
And lighthearted humor to give it that nice balance. But it doesn't have that.
Right.
It's all over the place with the type of humor that it has.
Yes.
Sometimes it's funny and sweet and heartfelt if it's like, banter between Vera Farmiga and Robert Downey Jr. Sometimes it's oddly just like awkward and misplaced, like the jokes that Jeremy Strong does.
Right. It's like, okay, now this is just like weird and ableist and I'm uncomfortable.
and sometimes Robert Downey Jr.'s, again, just doing the Iron Man thing. And it's like, okay, you can't do all of this.
Yeah.
So he's flying back. This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
He's flying. He's sitting on the plane, getting ready to fly home. He gets a call from Vincent D'Onofrio, and he's, Vincent D'Onofrio's trying to talk to him. Downey just wants to leave, and he says something like, unless he killed somebody. And then D'Onofrio's like, they found a body, he ran over somebody. And it's almost like Downey turns to the camera and goes, "Doi!"
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Downey turning to the camera, there's a fucking insane moment where he literally almost spikes the camera. It's when they're coming back from the bar, and he backs into the garage door he makes Vincent D'Onofrio back into the garage door like on purpose. And D'Onofrio's like, "Hey, you did that on purpose." And he's like, No, I didn't. And then he like looks almost directly down the barrel of the camera. He's like 2 inches off. And I was like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, why did we leave in the shot of Robert Downey Jr. turning to the camera as if he's Bugs Bunny going, "Ain't I a stinker?" It's just batshit insane. But yeah, and the unless he killed someone, don't tell me about it. That moment was the same thing, right? Where it's like, what are we doing? Like, anyway.
Yeah. So the deal is he's fuck. I mean, so years ago, Robert Duvall presided in this case where there was this high school kid named or this young guy named Mark Blackwell.
Yeah.
Who was arrested for discharging a firearm at his girlfriend's house and being a real piece of shit.
Yeah.
And rather than putting him away, Duvall gave him like 30 days of probation. And then, after he got off of probation, he killed his girlfriend. So he put him away for 20 years.
Yep.
And
which is like unambiguously fully Robert Duvall's fault. That woman's blood is on his hands.
Yeah.
And when you hear his explanation for it, kind of not super satisfying.
No. And again, there's no exploration of any sort of moral quandary here.
No. We don't go into his guilt about this event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Robert Duvall left to go get eggs or whatever, he supposedly ran over this guy. They found his blood on the car.
Yeah.
So
the guy was riding a bicycle. They found him in a ditch or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like initially it's basically like the cops are sort of looking into him. Downey comes back and like busts in while the cops are interviewing him and like dresses him down. And Duvall right away is basically like, "I don't remember shit." Like and Downey's like, "Well then how did your car get all banged up and there's like his blood on it?" And Duvall's like, "I don't know, weird." And he never seems like that interested in figuring out the truth, which is very interesting because what the movie wants you to believe is he's telling the truth when he says he doesn't remember. And I'm like, if that's the case, why is he like so nonchalant about this? Like, wouldn't you want to know who was driving your car when a man was murdered with it?
Yeah.
If you didn't remember it being you?
It doesn't commit to exploring that mystery. It doesn't commit to giving us a solid answer. But like, I don't know. I fucking watched Anatomy of a Fall.
Yeah.
That whole movie is about a guy falling out of a fucking attic.
Yeah.
And that the ins and outs of the case and all of the evidence is so well presented in that movie that you understand it completely. You understand all the different opinions, and then it gives you, the viewer, the ability to make it up in your own mind whether or not the main character did it or not, whether the main character killed her husband or not.
Which this movie kind of doesn't do.
It doesn't.
By the end of the movie, it's basically like the movie.
It doesn't matter.
Well, it's kind of like the movie sort of softly slides a napkin over to you, and you flip it over, and just written on it lightly in colored marker, it just says, "Robert Duvall totally killed that guy." Anyway, right? Where it's like, it doesn't make a big moment out of it. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, this whole thing that was supposed to be a mystery, he did it. Anyway. That's not what this movie was about. This movie's about nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. Then why were you trying to get me invested in the mystery and like parsing the evidence if what you were going to land on is like, yeah, no, he did it though. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so
they hire Dax Shepard.
Yes,
as his lawyer,
the amazing vomiting defense attorney.
This like they're gonna get somebody local. His law office is like on the second floor of like a furniture store
Yeah.
or something that he also owns. So he does the lawyering thing as a part-time gig, and Robert Downey Jr. gives him the like, where'd you go to law school thing, and
Dax
yada
Shepard
yada yada.
is like such like an impotent little cuck in this movie.
Really, it really is. And the movie just straight up forgets about him.
I think the movie hates him as much as Hank does.
Like the thing is, he's co-counsel when Robert Downey Jr. takes over the case. He's technically co-counsel to Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, but he's not making a peep.
No, he's just sitting in the fucking trial. He's sitting in the courtroom, twiddling his thumbs, and then occasionally before a trial, he'll be throwing up in the bushes.
His job is to show up every day, throw up, and fist bump Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
That's all he does. But yeah, so basically initially Duvall is like, no, like my son's not going to represent me. I'm totally going with Dax Shepard, right? So initially RDJ's like not even on the case, and Dax Shepard just like royally fucks up early on, right? So it becomes clear that it's like not going to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And during all the fucking Dax Shepard representing him bit of this movie, we're also getting like more shit with Vera Farmiga and more shit with like, I think sprinkled in here is one of 2 times in this movie where we sit down and watch old family movies and try and get an emotional reaction out of the audience by playing some music under it. It happens twice, which I like mostly when you see the like old family footage, like laughing mom and kids thing in a movie. It happens briefly for like a minute or less, one time in the movie, and even then you're rolling your eyes because it's like, oh, it's this trope. I was gobsmacked.
You know what else happens twice in this movie to get an emotional reaction? We play Bon Iver's Holocene.
A great song that is fucking totally out of place.
This
in this
is
movie.
why I think this movie was written by AI that got things wrong, because it's like someone punched into the computer like, okay, we're gonna put in a sad emotional indie song to underscore this scene, and then a cat walked across the keyboard and hit the enter button twice, so we got Holocene twice, and then the credits song, we'll just talk about it now. The credits song is The Scientist, originally written by Coldplay but covered by Willie Nelson. So then they inputted like, okay, fucking, I don't know, music for fucking weight loss pill commercial, covered by country artists.
Covered by the one country artist whose name is mentioned in this movie.
Yeah.
We say Willie
in
Nelson.
a one-off joke.
Right. In a one-off joke, we say Willie Nelson's name one time, ergo he must play us out of this film. Yeah, the Holocene drop really made my jaw hit the floor, because I was like, I can't believe that you made this very good song by an artist I really like totally not work in your movie. It's fucking crazy how out of place it feels. But yeah, fucking Dax Shepard is fucking up the case.
Yeah, it's the preliminary like hearing. He's fucking it up. Billy Bob Thornton plays the prosecuting attorney, who is the best part of this movie.
Yeah. We get like I said before, like full on like Terminator reveal, slow character, dun 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 dun. Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah. But like everyone else, he's just like completely wasted as an actor in this movie.
Yeah. He's good in this because he's always good.
Yeah.
He does also, to me, seem like he's maybe kind of sleepwalking through it a little bit.
I think Downey's sleepwalking through this too.
Yeah. But like Thornton just seems like he's sort of like, okay, like I'll give you a line delivery and it'll be good because I'm a good actor, but I'm not going to like try.
Yeah.
He seems like he's doing the bare minimum.
It's a lot more interesting to think that this is Lord Malvo. It's Lord Malvo at the end of season 1 of Fargo when he's gray. It's just another one of his adventures. And he's going back to his hotel room every night, listening to the tapes of the people who he's tortured and conned in the past.
He's going after Duvall for some other reason related to the mysterious crime syndicate or whatever. Yeah, and so then eventually fucking Duvall fires Dax Shepard, or demotes Dax Shepard, I guess, and brings RDJ on as well to work the case.
Yeah, there's they're talking about it, and it's literally like I'm gonna write you a note with a big checkbox. It's like yes or no. What do you want?
Yeah.
And and he's Robert Downey Jr.'s in his childhood bedroom that's like they've just been using for storage, and he's got Metallica poster and a Motorhead poster. And Duvall just slides it under the door, so they're working together now.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the scene where Robert Downey Jr. puts on a Metallica shirt and goes riding his bike. What the fuck are we doing?
It goes on for such a long time.
A very, very long time.
And ultimately what this sets up is the moment where he realizes that the woman that he finger banged in the bar is his high school sweetheart's daughter. But it's like, this is a long walk to a very short destination, right?
But it's like it's several minutes long of him riding his bike and riding without handlebars and doing all these.
He does the look ma no hands thing.
He's rediscovering his childhood. He's connecting with this, and now he fell off his bike and he's getting a ride from his high school girlfriend, and he realizes that he just possibly fucked his daughter.
He
just like the fucking mood swings in this thing.
He crashes his bike because not only is he riding with no hands, but he starts riding with no hands and closing his eyes at the same time while the pharmaceutical commercial music is playing. And I'm like, that's a great way to crash your fucking bike, dog. You either need to have your eyes open or be steering.
Yeah.
You can't not do both.
Yeah. So how he gets tipped off to the fact that maybe Vera Farmiga's daughter is his daughter.
Yeah.
Is he's sitting in the car with them after he got run over, and she like puts her hair in her mouth as she's looking at him like.
Yeah, which by the way, while we're talking about this, this actress who plays the daughter who he made out with in the bar is also like in the car giving like a ferociously horny performance.
Yeah. I mean, this is the middle of her giving fuck me eyes to Downey.
She like wants to bone this dude so fucking bad, and her mom is like, "What's going on, you two? Do you know each other?" But meanwhile, her daughter's like fucking salivating, looking at him. It's insane. But yeah, she does the hair thing where she like puts the strand of hair in her mouth, and it talks about how she's studying law at Georgetown, and she's like, law, like all like it's like a fucking dirty word.
And then later in the movie, when Downey is hanging out with his actual daughter when she comes to visit for the weekend, his daughter puts her hair in her mouth too in the same way, and he stops and looks at her, and at this moment I picked up my pillow. I paused the movie, picked up my pillow that was on the couch, screamed into it, and then I had to get up and take like a 20-minute break from the movie.
It is nuts
because they haven't even this was before they even cut to the next scene. I think the next scene after this, he's like, so I may have fathered an illegitimate child with my high school girlfriend.
Yes, and the ending of that scene,
flipping through his yearbook and like counting how many months.
Yes, and the ending of that scene where his daughter puts the hair in her mouth in the exact same way. It's not just the visual thing. We then cut back to Downey and he goes, well, that's a coincidence. That's what that is. Just in case you didn't fucking get it. It's insane. Also, she does the hair thing in the mouth, and much like the fucking like 20-something daughter of Vera Farmiga delivers a line after that. His daughter goes, best summer vacation ever, which is a thing that he's like been coaching her to say to her mom when she gets back.
Yeah.
And it like on top of the hair thing in the mouth being ridiculous and insane, it's unconscionable that the movie made me listen to this precocious child say this line twice in fucking 10 seconds. Yeah.
It's It was the moment, I think, for me where the movie was just like, oh, we're just going fully off the rails now. Like, we're just gonna drive this train completely off the rails, and you can hang on.
We're just like in fucking undiscovered country now.
We're
forging new ground.
Now Robert Duvall's taking a shit all over the floor of the bathroom, and we're off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And somewhere in here, he also finds out that Duvall has colon cancer.
Yes.
So we've got like 6 fucking balls in the air right now. We have so many things going on.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. So, fuck. There's so much. When he figures out that his dad has colon cancer, and then the thing that you're saying about it being like an AI generated script, having that vibe really resonates with me, because literally the scene where he learns that his dad has colon cancer happens, and then the next scene, Robert Duvall is on the floor of the bathroom vomiting into a toilet, and then he immediately shits himself, and we have not seen him be frail or infirm at all.
That's more or less where we're at.
Yeah.
Sort of like it's coming up again.
Yeah.
There's a billion things happening in this movie. We're going to be jumping all over the place.
It's so crazy, because it's like basically as soon as the information is processed in RDJ's brain that his dad has colon cancer, Robert Duvall becomes like terminally ill outwardly, and he has not been acting sick at all.
Yeah, now we just have to inject it into the plot.
Like suddenly he's like on death's door, and I was like, this guy was fine one scene ago. But yeah, so then he's puking on the floor and shit.
Yeah.
And
His daughter comes to Robert Downey Jr.'s real daughter comes to visit.
Right.
He's expecting that she's not gonna have a good relationship with Grandpa, and of course they get off. Things go off without a hitch, and they get on famously. And one night, Robert Duvall is throwing up in the toilet, and Robert Downey Jr. comes to check on him, and then he shits himself, and then he takes Robert Duvall into the shower and tries to clean him off as he's like shitting himself and shits everywhere. It is insane.
And
so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I'll say. My grandfather was terminally ill with cancer. He passed away about 10 years ago. And there was a moment where he was bedridden, and I had to help him get up to use his portable toilet. It was one of the most emotionally devastating and uncomfortable things I've ever had to do in my life, was help this frail old man who was dying and in pain use the bathroom because he was not able to do it himself.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people have had that experience and have felt similarly to me, but it is so weird that this movie plays it off as like, ha ha, funny.
Yes.
Cancer Robert Duvall is going poo-poo all over the bathroom.
This is the thing, right? Because it's not that there's not a way that this scene could work in a movie about what this movie is about.
Yeah.
Right? Like in a movie about a father and son reconnecting while the father's at the end of his life, you could have a scene where he, because of his colon cancer, shits his pants, and his son has to shower him off. Right? And that scene could be handled gracefully, and it could be very tender and have an emotional impact. And this movie starts the scene as if it's going to go that way.
Yeah, it does.
Right? He gets him, Robert Downey Jr. is very tender with him as he gets him into the shower and starts showering him off. And then this fucking annoying kid starts knocking at the door being like, "Can I come in?" And even then we're sort of playing like, oh, this is like a weird moment where we have to like, we don't really want to explain what's going on to this like kid who's maybe not ready to deal with this yet. But then it just like turns into a bunch of jokes.
Yeah.
And it's the tone problems in the script are like maybe best represented in this scene, where it's like you almost had like a kind of poignant and emotional and real moment here, and then it just turned into now we're all laughing, and then the next scene is we're going to get ice cream.
Yeah, if you had developed this as an arc, if you had set this up better and you had paid it off better, if the scenes before it and immediately after it made any sort of coherent sense, it could work. But just with taking it in along with everything else that this movie is trying to do, it just strikes me as so tonally inconsistent and cheap and hollow.
Yeah.
And like it's again, like my jaw dropped in this movie multiple times, and this is one of those where I'm just like looking at the movie gobsmacked, like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Right.
Why am I watching this?
Great. So that you can listen to Blackjack's episode.
I guess so.
Yeah. I don't really know if there's anything else that I can say about that scene other than I don't know if I've ever seen an old man's shit-covered underwear committed to cinema before. This might be the only movie I've seen that visual in.
There's the low angle shot of they're standing in the shower, and there's Duvall's bare feet, and then Downey Jr.'s feet with shoes on or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's like poopy.
Yeah. And they're
running down the drain.
Right. And they're like slipping in the poopy on their way to the shower.
Yeah.
There's a moment where they kind of slip in his shit.
Yeah.
And what?
What the fuck?
So the thing that makes that scene worse, as you just said, is like it is not bookended with scenes or indeed the rest of a film that allow that scene to land with any kind of emotional weight. And paramount to that point is the next fucking scene where RDJ and his kid get ice cream and then he sits her in his lap while he's driving.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Are you and mommy gonna get a divorce?" And then she's like, "Well, I want to be with mommy because mommies are lonely after divorces. Daddies aren't lonely. They just find younger mommies." And I was like, I want to end my own life.
So many questions. Why is the child driving a car?
Why does she talk like that?
Again, this kid's like fucking 6.
Yeah.
It's not like you're 14, you're gonna get your permit soon, and no one's out.
Do not let this child drive a car.
No. Don't do that.
But also, like, I do not need to have a fucking 6-year-old explain to me how divorces work in this country.
Because she's smart and precocious, and she's sassy, and her dad's Iron Man, and he can use sassy Iron Man Avengers dialogue on her.
RDJ, God bless him, is reacting to this as if she is dropping pearls of wisdom that are cracking his hardened heart or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know how the movie expects me to believe that his response to hearing her say, "Daddies only find younger mommies. Mommies are lonely," makes him feel any way other than fucking extremely annoyed. Anyway.
We should probably get back to the trial.
Yeah.
There's been a couple trial scenes here where Downey's officially taken over. He's trying to stack the jury.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yes.
Where he's and it's one of the scenes in this movie that the tone is just really weird with everything else around it, and like taking it on its own, it was like, this is kind of funny, kind of clever, but it's again like everything else that's going on in this movie, it's so weird.
Yeah,
he's trying to look for like small town rural Americans with small town rural American values.
Yes,
by asking the potential jury candidates what their bumper stickers say.
Yes.
And they do this joke multiple times where it's like a middle-aged white lady, and she raises her hand and she's like, "I have one that says tolerance in the symbols of different religions." And it's like, nah. And then you'll get the racist tick who's like, the Holocaust was a lie.
There's a guy
and the South will rise again. And Downey just like gives a big thumbs up to Dax Shepard, like, we're gonna get that one.
Yeah, there's a guy who like gets on the jury because of his like fucking pro Second Amendment bumper sticker. And I'm like, boy, oh boy, can you fucking tell that this movie came out pre-Trump presidency.
Oh yeah.
Like this scene specifically, I was like, oh, the movie thinks that it's charming that small town people in deep red counties in Indiana believe in conspiracy theories and are fucking insane. Like this movie thinks that's a funny joke. All right, like let's put a pin in that for fucking 7 years from now and see how we're all feeling about it then. When they're storming, when the people on this jury are entering the Capitol and ransacking Nancy Pelosi's office or whatever the fuck.
I do agree with the guy who says Willie Nelson should be president.
Yeah,
That's the most moderate of opinions that these fucking rural fucking nut jobs have.
I like that RDJ asks him a follow-up question to that, and his response is, "They never got him on a felony." That was the one and only joke in this movie that I thought was funny. Was the Willie Nelson should be president because they never got him on a felony thing.
Do you think because of that joke we needed him to cover Coldplay at the end of the movie?
No.
Okay.
If the end credit song had been any normal Willie Nelson song, it would have been fine. Fine choice. It's very strange that it's his cover of Coldplay's The Scientist.
It's a good cover.
Yes.
I sat down and like listened to it today outside of the context of the movie and listened to the Coldplay song, and like Willie Nelson covering Coldplay is better than Coldplay doing Coldplay.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but
it would almost have to be.
What the fuck is it doing in this movie? I'm sorry, there's a million details like I'm fixating on.
Yeah,
this movie.
You're fine. Anyway, so
later on the trial scenes, they're trying to establish if Mark Blackwell was high when he got hit.
Yeah.
And also like if Robert Duvall could have hit him and not noticed, because it's, I don't know, there's something about like running over a snapping turtle that they try to introduce.
They do a whole like 2 minutes on this fucking snapping turtle thing that basically just comes to nothing.
Yeah, and there's video evidence of Robert Duvall's car following Mark Blackwell from a gas station or something, and Duvall had denied that he followed him. He said he went down this road or something.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, the timeline doesn't match up, so we caught you in a lie. And he's like, I'm an old man who doesn't remember things.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because the movie doesn't care about making it matter.
Also, by the way, like the big conflict, because now that Downey knows about Duvall's cancer and his like chemo, because Downey talks to his doctor at one point, and the doctor basically is like, oh yeah, it's basically like terminal now. But the doctor mentions that the side effects of the chemo is like memory loss and like mood swings and stuff, right? So like Downey knows all that and wants to use it in the trial as part of his defense. And like the big thing with Duvall is like, no, nobody can know that I'm receiving chemo treatment because it will ruin my reputation, and the cases that I adjudicated in the last 6 months will all be like looked at again. Which like, sure, I get like old man, he's very precious about his reputation or whatever. But it is just like, I don't know, it just feels a little like flimsy as the main conflict of this movie, is that like Robert Duvall just won't tell anyone, including his own kids, that he's getting chemo.
Yeah.
It doesn't paint him in a very sympathetic light.
And his legacy in terms of like whatever the verdict of the trial is going to be.
Yeah.
And they bring up the legacy of Reagan and the legacy of so
yeah,
and
they
so.
Bring up Reagan without ever mentioning AIDS, much like the fucking Dennis Quaid.
No,
movie.
the Dennis Quaid movie does mention it.
Yeah,
it does say the text does flash on screen. Reagan presided over the deaths of 20,000 or 80,000 people during the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
And moves on.
And all the fucking right-wing boomers who want to overturn marriage equality in the audience are like, yeah, another win.
Yeah, because there's this montage where they
fucking
do like
monsters.
There's a montage they do where it's like some people in the United States didn't like what Reagan was doing, so they made up lies about him. And there's like college protesters and so we do the montage thing where there's like news articles and fake newspapers and shit showing up. So we bring up AIDS and we bring up the war on drugs, and it's like, you're just going to bring those up and then move on?
You're just going to be like, oh yeah, so this is some bullshit that people said that definitely wasn't true about him. Anyway,
he's going to go tell Gorbachev to tear down the wall now.
Yeah. Anyway, but like, so that's the main conflict between RDJ and Duvall, is that RDJ's like, just fucking use your chemo treatment as a defense, and he's like, no. And so this leads to the fucking there's the tornado scene.
So they're watching Super 8 movies. They're watching movies, childhood movies. The car accident comes up where.
This is this is during the tornado.
This is during it. This is where we get more context to it. So it's like, Vincent D'Onofrio was a rising high school baseball star.
Mm.
They thought he could go to, play college and go to the major leagues or whatever. He and Robert Downey Jr. get in a car accident, and Robert Downey Jr. was driving.
Yeah.
And so he injured in the accident. Vincent D'Onofrio injured his hand.
And
I like
the Mark Lewis peeping Tom creep
Yeah.
that he is. Dale has footage of the car accident
Mhm.
spliced into the happy family footage. And this was a moment where I was like, no, I clocked this guy correctly. He is absolutely watching horrible car accidents and beating off in this basement and being like, look at the fear in their eyes. It's beautiful.
So he's Elias Koteas in Crash.
I guess so. Elias,
Everything comes back to Crash on this show.
I guess so.
We just
All roads
add
lead to
more
Crash.
lore to the Crash universe.
It is our third most popular episode. You believe
That's
that?
fucking wild.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, and I know a lot of people love Cronenberg. I just didn't know we had that many Cronin heads in the audience.
It was a big hit. I think a lot of people dropped in for that one, who aren't regular listeners to the show, because the numbers are way higher than that one.
We gotta whip out a Videodrome or
a
fly or a Naked Lunch or something.
I
And
guess
get them back.
Weirdly, another one that performed similarly is fucking Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Oh, sorry. Speaking of Twin Peaks, by the way, the murdered dude's mom is Grace Zabriskie, who is Sarah Palmer.
Yeah.
Which as soon as she came screaming up to Robert Duvall when he gets booked for the murder, she's screaming at him and pounding on the doors of the car and spitting on the window and stuff. I was like, man, if you need just a woman to howl in anguish about the death of her child, accept no substitutes. just call up Grace Zabriskie.
I recognized her at first, but I thought, is that Ellen Burstyn? No, that's not Ellen Burstyn. Who else could it be? And then I looked it up and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's Sarah Palmer.
Another Twin Peaks connection.
Anyway. But yeah, so they're watching these fucking movies and there's footage of the car accident and it triggers Robert Duvall.
Yeah, they're in the basement because the tornado's happening.
Right.
So Robert Duvall
gets
out, so Robert Duvall gets out of the basement, and I thought he was gonna go fight the tornado because the tornado's picking up, and he just runs outside.
Literally, if this old fuck got sucked into a tornado at this point in the movie, it would immediately redeem the movie to me.
Oh yeah,
so hard.
We'd shave 90 minutes off this fucking thing.
If this dude just got fucking sucked into a twister and ejected into the air, I would this movie would be 5 stars. That's not what happens. Instead, him and RDJ go in the house and have a big argument.
A dramatic argument. Mm-hmm.
Big dramatic argument. So there's a couple things. There's a couple things with this tornado scene that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Other than the argument, which is the boring part, because it's basically them just being like, oh, why weren't you easy on me when I flipped the car? And
why didn't you ever tell me you loved me?
Right.
Standard, just daddy
yeah,
shit.
But the stuff that I thought was worth calling out is the establishing shot for this tornado scene is horrendous CGI, which is very weird because nothing else in the movie is obviously CGI.
So the some of the diner shots where they have these there's these 3 really nice windows, and then this gorgeous picturesque Twin Peaks sort of waterfall in the background,
like a dam with a waterfall.
I'm that's not fucking there.
Yeah.
They're comping that shit in so hard.
That's true. That's a good call out. But this fucking, the establishing shot that starts the tornado sequence is like a tornado watchtower or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's just all this fucking CGI shit flying around in the air. And I'm like, this looks fucking awful, and you didn't need this establishing shot. The fucking tornado alarm is going off, and everybody's going in the basement talking about tornadoes. Just cut the fucking shitty CGI shot.
And do we even need a tornado happen? Is the tornado a metaphor?
I don't. If it is, it was lost on me. I'll tell you that much. The other thing,
it's a tornado. They're having an argument in the house while a tornado's happening. So there's a tornado inside,
I guess,
and a tornado outside.
Yeah. But the other thing in this scene is when they're in the basement watching the family films. fucking Vincent D'Onofrio's whole family is down there, including his teenage son, who starts talking as if he's a character in this movie during this scene. And this is literally the only scene where he has any lines of dialogue in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm Vincent D'Onofrio's son, your nephew, and I have some things to say.
Yeah, D'Onofrio and Strong vanished from huge swaths of this movie.
Yeah.
And then the movie also is like, we're going to give D'Onofrio a family and just shove them in the background out of focus.
D'Onofrio's wife probably appears on screen twice, both times completely wordlessly in this movie.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane. I'm like, where is this woman the rest of the time? Is she like a heart surgeon? Is she always working at the hospital? Like, what's going on? It's fucking nuts, because like every once in a while they'll just cut to a shot of her and I'm like, who's that? I've never seen this woman before. Yeah, but anyway, RDJ and fucking Duvall have their big argument. At one point Duvall does slap him, I think, in this argument. He slaps him at some point. I think it's around here. He also breaks fucking Dale's projector, which is supposed to be like a sad moment, but instead I felt nothing.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was funny to see Robert Duvall be like, get this fucking shit off the table.
I do. We haven't talked about Duvall's like performance.
Yeah.
He was nominated for an Academy Award for this. This was the year that J.K. Simmons won for Whiplash, which I haven't even seen Whiplash, and I'm like, correct.
Yeah.
Correct choice over Duvall in this movie. Duvall's really, really trying.
Yeah.
He's really trying.
Yeah.
And I just love what a cantankerous, vulgar old shit he is in this movie.
Yes. He's at his best when he's just like fucking dressing Robert Downey Jr. down and being a huge asshole. And like the moments where his performance works less for me is when he's being like nice and sensitive and you're supposed to care about him. But yeah, like I think it's an okay performance in a very bad, poorly written movie. And it's fucking insane that it got nominated for Best Supporting Actor, because like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, I mean, did the Academy watch this movie where Robert Downey Jr. bangs his niece, and they were like, we're gonna reward this.
But we're only gonna reward Robert Duvall. Robert Downey Jr.'s wife was a producer on this movie, which is also a very interesting.
You know who else was a producer on this movie? Trump administration U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. Because Steve Mnuchin was a producer at Warner Brothers, and when his name showed up in the credits at the end of the movie, I was like, "What the fuck?"
Okay, well, that
which is the
explains
same thing that I do every time I've seen his name in the opening credits to Batman v Superman, which I probably watched once post Trump administration, and that's the last time I watched it. And I was like, "Fucking Steve Mnuchin gave us Batman v Superman." And then he was part of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which of those is a more damnable offense. I'm not sure which of those is worse.
Well, Mnuchin being a producer on this explains the jury selection scene that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fucking the trial continues, and it's not looking good for Duvall, because like the evidence is like stacking up against him. At one point here, like in the kind of later stage of the trial, Duvall gets triggered because Billy Bob Thornton rewinds the evidence video too far.
And he starts flipping out in court.
And he sees himself buying eggs on a security video, and it like makes his brain go haywire and give him a stroke, which is insane.
Somewhere in here, I think it's between Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall, I'm not sure, we're talking about God all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah.
And the movie just literally drops it in and it's like, what do you think happens after you die? And again, we're just like checking off cliches.
Right.
And that was I just want to call it that moment and move on from it, because it's like just another thing in this movie that is trying to do something.
Yeah.
It's just flailing and screaming, and it's like, I'm a movie that's important.
It's just like a movie that was born wrong and is struggling for life, like it's the Eraserhead baby.
Yeah, it's like the Ripley clones that didn't take in Resurrection, like all malformed and floating in formaldehyde.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an interesting mental image.
Yeah.
But yeah, fucking Duvall flips out in court. They're in the hospital, and Duvall sort of says that he's like, I think I did it. It's like, again, the movie doesn't really commit to it,
Right.
but it seems like he drove off with the intention of running that guy over.
Yeah, because he remembers basically what we've seen happen is him remember what the guy said to him in the convenience store, but we don't know what the guy said yet.
Mm-hmm.
That reveal that is played like it's supposed to be some big mic drop moment in the movie happens later, and it's very underwhelming when it happens.
There's a shot when Robert Downey Jr. is like getting up to step out of the hospital room, and he looks. It's like he's sort of looking in the vague direction of like the life support machine, and he looks at it for a real long time, and I'm like, just pull that fucking plug. Just pull that plug, baby. Just wrap this shit up. Let's go home.
Can't lose the case if you're dead, old man. Yeah. So then fucking they go back to continue the trial. We basically like get to the end of the trial here.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to the end of the trial, I do have to mention, and it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. Billy Bob Thornton's collapsible water cup that they make a huge moment of him unfurling and then recollapsing at the end of this trial.
Yeah, he like unfurls it at the beginning as like part of an introduction to his character with that like villain reveal shot.
Yeah, no, it's like it looks like it's a can of dip kind of at first, like it's like chewing tobacco, but then he fucking takes the lid off, and I think the lid has a sexy lady on it. I'm not sure about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the lid has some kind of picture on it, and takes the lid off, and then he fucking like unfurls it, and it's this like stainless steel collapsible tumbler that then he pours his water into, and they make such a moment out of it, and I'm like, what is that?
And then at the end of the movie, when he loses the case or whatever, the case is over, half wins or whatever, then he like, you know, dejectedly like folds it up and puts it back in his suitcase.
And they make such a moment of it both times, and I'm like, what does this mean? Why did you commit this image to film and cut it into this movie? I fucking straight up don't get it.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Anyway, yeah, so like in this last courtroom bit, fucking does Duvall fire Downey again?
He tries to, and then the judge is like, you'll have to finish this line of questioning,
right? Because he starts fucking. So basically, they are cross-examining Duvall, right? He takes the stand, and Billy Bob goes out and asks him a bunch of questions that make him look super guilty. The big mic drop moment for Billy Bob Thornton is when he's like, have I not characterized your testimony accurately or whatever? And Duvall's like, no. And he's like, I do think I killed that guy. And everyone...
there's like 4 or 5 times in this final scene where the courtroom just gasps collectively.
They're reacting like it's a fucking rap battle in 8 Mile. This courtroom, they're like, oh! Like so vocal, and I'm like, courtrooms are not like this. Anyway, so then it's Downey's turn to talk to him after he basically admits guilt, and then Downey's like, well, you can't actually remember shit because you're doing chemo, aren't you? And Duvall tries to not have to answer the question, and the judge is like, you can't fire your lawyer while you're being cross-examined. That's how courts work, which could be true. I don't fucking know. And so like Downey forces him to answer the question basically. And so he's like, yeah, like memory loss is a side effect of the treatment I'm undergoing. And Downey's like, bam. And then also, what is this one guy's name who's your only black coworker?
Yeah.
And it's Chekhov's Gus.
Well, okay, there's a couple other things in here. too. But yeah, the fucking oh god, the bailiff coming back, and that's like the final mic drop.
Yes.
I was like, go fuck yourself,
Yeah.
movie. So there's a flashback in here to the grocery store interaction that he has with Blackwell,
Yeah.
where Blackwell, they're like at the freezer getting eggs and milk, and Blackwell says, "Hey, Judge, sorry to hear about your wife. I heard she's buried like 50 feet away from my girlfriend, which means I won't have to walk very long to piss on both their graves." Just like the most cartoonishly evil thing this fucking guy could say at this moment.
And this is supposed to be like, the movie plays it like this is such a big reveal. Like, it's like, Robert Duvall did kill this guy on purpose, and this scumbag deserved it because what a monster. And I'm like, I don't know, movie. He still just kind of said something and walked away.
Yeah.
Not sure if this guy deserved to be run down by a motor vehicle, but the movie treats it as if it is unambiguously good that Robert Duvall probably killed this guy because of this scene.
We also have like the conclusion to the father-son plot of the movie, where Downey is questioning Duvall, cross-examining Duvall, and is asking him about why he gave Mark Blackwell 30 days probation and why he gave himself, Robert Downey Jr., whatever it was, X amount of years in juvie.
Yeah.
And Duvall is like, when I saw Mark Blackwell, I saw you, I saw my son.
Yeah.
And then when I saw you sitting in court, I saw him.
Right.
Which is just a weird,
It's
such a weird way to like, again, it seems like it's attempting a theme where it's
Right.
like, I gave someone a second chance and it led to them, they were going down the wrong path. So I gave them a second chance and it ended up, being a mistake. So I vowed not to make that same mistake with you.
Yeah.
And it just lands like a lead balloon. Like it just doesn't work.
And just like the pissing on the grave comment from Blackwell, it's just like so ham-fisted for what the movie is trying to accomplish, right? It's like there's just no subtlety or delicacy or anything to it. It's like, instead of attempting to say something with subtext that will help you explore a greater theme, we're just gonna like say what the thing is. Yeah, it's not good.
No.
and the whole bit with them having this father-son heart-to-heart on the witness stand was driving me fucking crazy, because for the rest of the time that RDJ is cross-examining Duvall, Billy Bob Thornton's popping up with objection after objection to everything he fucking says. And then they have this like emotional father-son heart-to-heart moment while he's still on the witness stand.
Yeah, it's like we're just going to forget how trials work
And
for the
yes,
emotional
suddenly Billy
climax
Bob
of the
Thornton
film.
is shutting the fuck up, I guess. Somebody stuffed a sock into his mouth or some shit. Because I'm like, as soon as he starts talking about like, why don't you love me, Dad? Billy Bob Thornton should be like, objection, Your Honor, relevance. Like, I'm not a lawyer and I object. But yeah, it's fucking bananas. It's so crazy that they like reconcile like during the trial while he's on the witness stand.
Yeah. And so the jury finds him not guilty for murder, but guilty for manslaughter. So
For voluntary manslaughter.
So he goes to prison for 4 years.
But he actually only goes to prison for 7 months. Like he
gets an
early release thing because he's gonna die
dying,
from cancer.
Yeah.
So
there somewhere in here there's the resolution between Robert Downey Jr. and Vera Farmiga where she reveals that she slept with Glenn because, and again, this is one of those like exposition backstory things that they explain multiple times in the movie and it's never really clear and it doesn't matter. He went to go see Metallica
and never
came back.
They say it so many times and I'm like, okay, where did he go?
Yeah.
That is never explained. He went to Metallica and never came back.
So Vera Farmiga decided to fuck his brother.
Yes. Which, like, okay.
I do like one of the scenes. They have just their whole romance stuff is fucking wild. We didn't even get into all of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Where they like she makes him break into her diner.
Yes.
As like, and they have a romantic thing.
Yeah, and like, because he doesn't know she owns the diner,
Yeah.
so he like breaks a window to get in, and then she drops on him that she owns the place, and he's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that's fucking insane psychopathic behavior.
And
then she grinds on his dick a bunch.
Yeah.
And when I say grinds, the camera like is a close up of her ass
yeah.
gyrating on his lap, and it feels like weirdly obscene. in a way that I was like, this feels like it serves no purpose other than to just like be like, hey, look at Vera Farmiga fucking doing this.
And in one of
Fucking
these
riding his crotch in jeans.
one of these romance scenes, they make out or whatever, and I think they like start having a little bit of a spat, and she gets up and leaves the room, and I'm and as soon as I think this, where I'm like, hey, maybe mention to her that you made out with her daughter,
Yeah.
or and finger blasted her or whatever. He says it out loud as like
he's like, also by the way, I made out with your daughter.
as like a thing that he's struggling with, and he he can't say it, but
Yeah.
she just left the room, and it's like, what the fuck, Justus, what the fuck is
And also,
this movie?
like, that moment seems to telegraph that he is eventually going to tell her, which again, he doesn't.
He doesn't. Okay.
He does not do. And they have like sort of a fight later on in the movie, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
They like kind of get mad at each other for a second about something. I don't fucking
It
remember
is.
what
It is weird. It is just watching these two middle-aged people have a high school relationship
Yeah.
in this adult drama where they're like, and again, there's moments of this movie where it's like maybe it's about recapturing youth, but it never commits to one of those themes hard enough for any of this to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So yeah, they find out. He finds out that she fucking banged Vincent D'Onofrio, and then they make out afterwards. So I guess
Yeah.
he's cool with it.
Yeah, Duvall gets well, actually we get a button on Krumholtz. We bring back Krumholtz. Where we're in the bathroom again because that's our one location in Chicago in this movie.
We got one day to shoot with David Krumholtz.
And and it's RDJ and Krumholtz in the bathroom again, and Krumholtz is like busting his balls, and RDJ is like being a lot more like introspective and sensitive now.
I learned something. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, did you? Because if this scene wasn't in the movie, I literally wouldn't understand that this character was supposed to have had an arc.
Yeah.
Because in the last scene of the trial, he's being a huge asshole to Robert Duvall in front of the whole courtroom. It doesn't seem like he's learned shit. But apparently he has.
Yeah.
And then Robert Duvall gets let out of prison.
They go fishing. The fishing, oh man. So there's this thing that they set up at the beginning of the movie with Robert Downey Jr. and his kid about like asking him for candy. It's Bit of Honey specifically.
Yes, where's my
Because-
bit of honey,
where's
old
my-
man? Which, when that little 6-year-old kid says it at the beginning of the movie, I was like, is she a fucking ghost from the 20s? Like, why does this 6-year-old in 2014 who was born after 9/11 know what the fuck bit o' honey is?
She's asking for like some whorehound candy.
Right. Father, may I please have some saltwater taffy? It's just fucking. I was like, what? But then we learn that apparently this is a thing that he must have taught her because it's a thing he used to say to his
dad because he's brought a bit of honey on the fishing trip.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my god, like what this is what this movie has stooped to try to get an emotional reaction out of the audience.
Sponsored by Bit O' Honey.
Earlier in the movie, at like shortly after the Ford commercial shot, they're like sitting on the porch drinking beers, and they're Bud Lights, and like D'Onofrio has his feet up, and then he puts his feet down, and you see that 6-pack, that Bud Light logo just center frame.
Yeah, Bit of Honey and Bud Light paid big money for The Judge to be featured in David Dobkin's The Judge.
There's there was something earlier in the movie about who's the best trial lawyer you ever saw, and Downey mentions a colleague, and then Duvall is like, it's you, you're the best, because of course it is.
Yep. And those are
and then the shot of him, the it holds on Robert Downey Jr. like casting out a line.
He's like, I'm gonna catch a sunfish before you, old man.
And I'm like, he's fucking dead.
Yes.
Like you're gonna look back and he's dead. And
1000%.
And Duvall's just slumped over in the fucking boat, dead. And I'm like, you gonna check his pulse or anything?
No.
Just gonna.
The only thing he does is steal the hat off his head and sit there contemplatively.
I thought he was gonna flip him into the water.
Which, it's so fucking nuts because this guy is still like able to get up and go get into a boat and go fishing.
Yeah.
Right? He's not like bedridden, right? And so he slumps over and appears to have lost consciousness. And Downey immediately is like, well, he's dead, and now I have to like take this moment to feel sad about the loss of my father. And I'm like, fucking start that boat motor up and get this man to a hospital. He might be able to be saved. You don't know if he's dead.
Yeah.
He might have just lost consciousness.
Yeah.
Maybe he fell
No
asleep.
sleep. Old people do that. Just slap him across the face a couple of times.
Just be
Hey,
like,
Dad.
But he doesn't even shake him
No.
and go, Dad.
Doesn't
Dad?"
touch him.
Literally, he just looks at him and is like, that man's dead. Well, now this is my story. And it's like, okay.
All right. Cue Holocene. Let's wrap this shit up, people.
And he takes the hat off his head, which I feel like is a very undignified thing to do when your father croaks right in front of you. Is steal the hat off his head and then just kind of look at his corpse for a little bit. Which is what happens.
Goes back home for the funeral, makes plans to nail Vera Farmiga after the funeral.
More endings in this thing than fucking Return of the King.
Yeah.
Because, there's this ending, which is the funeral.
And there's the courthouse ending
Uh-huh.
where he sees that the flag is at half-mast, which was a reference to the legacy conversation earlier.
Yep.
And then he goes into the empty courtroom and spins the chair.
And this final shot is clearly supposed to mean something because we hold on it for so long and get multiple angles of it. Just Downey watching this judge chair spin around and around and around. And I'm like...
And then the chair stops facing him.
Yeah.
While Holocene's playing. And it's like, you're trying to do something here.
Yep.
Don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is because this movie... I was going to say lost me. That's impossible because it never had me, right? Like, I'm like, I have never understood a single thing you were trying to say this whole time.
Yeah.
So making the final shot this big, like, oh, we're imbuing this with all this meaning is really working against you, not for you. Like, you should have stuck with the fucking funeral ending. At least that had, like, a button on it, you know? This, I don't know what the fuck this is.
That's the judge. I think it's your turn. Justus. Is The Judge the greatest movie ever made?
David, this this movie is fucking bananas. It's very, very strange. And it was an experience to watch that I enjoyed. I liked watching the judge, but I didn't like the judge. Like this movie fucking sucks. This movie is really bad. It's very poorly written. Structurally, it is fucking completely poorly assembled. The script sucks. It doesn't make any kind of logical or narrative or thematic sense. It's just kind of 2.5 hours of like meandering weirdness, like let's fucking throw all the Oscar bait drama shit that we can think of at a wall and see what sticks. And like none of it sticks. Which is sort of the charm of this movie. It's kind of charming how much of a failure this was to me, where it's like if some of this had worked and some of it hadn't, it would be maybe less interesting than it is as a total abject failure.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. That being said, like, I like a So Bad It's Good movie. I would kind of maybe put this in that camp a little bit. Like, this is sort of a movie that's worth watching because of how bad it is. But it's not the greatest movie ever made. Like, there are So Bad It's Good movies that I would give that crown to, right? Like The Room, for example.
Sure.
Which we'll probably never do on the podcast. But there is a So Bad It's Good movie that could be the greatest movie ever made. This is not one of them. This is a so bad that it's mildly diverting and entertaining, but it's still fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
David is the Judge, the greatest movie ever made.
Justus, this is a movie that a type of movie, a genre of movie, which is, I don't know that we've covered a movie like this on the show before, this is a movie that my parents would have rented through the Netflix mail subscription service.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad would have said, it was okay. My mom would have kind of gone like, it was interesting.
Yep.
And then they sent it back, and then they forgot about it 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
This is the God Emperor of that kind of movie.
Totally. This is a big your parents rent this and watch it and sleep through the last act of it.
Yeah.
Movie.
It is by turns perplexing, and oddly compelling and boring. It is virtually incomprehensible at every turn in terms of the emotional beats, the thematic elements of the film, the plot elements of the film, character motivations. The writing is just atrocious on this thing, all over this thing. It takes a cast of great actors and wastes them.
Yeah.
Justus, I fucking hate this movie, but I am weirdly compelled by it, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I don't know if I would recommend that people watch this, but it is like, it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
It's one of the wildest movies that we've covered on this show.
It really is.
It's like up there with Stone Cold, where it's like your jaw's on the floor every 5 minutes in this thing, but not for good reasons.
Yeah.
No, The Judge is not the greatest movie ever made. It's not the worst movie ever made, which we haven't technically defined.
Yeah.
Because on this show, but like, to me, the worst movie ever made just has nothing redeeming about it. And there are redeeming qualities to this movie, legitimately good things. I think the performances from these actors are all relatively competent. Some of them are even, pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's, perfectly like passable as a movie that's like, made with, the bare minimum skill required to make a film. And it is just kind of amazing to watch this thing and witness all of the crazy shit in this movie unfold. So that's what's keeping it from like total bottom of the barrel worst movie ever made territory.
Yeah.
I would much rather return to this than the Emoji Movie.
Oh yeah,
but
1000%.
But I mean, this movie just doesn't know what it is, and it is a 2 hour and 20-minute identity crisis, and I fucking hated it.
Yeah, it's bad. Bad movie.
It's The Judge. That's The Judge.
You don't know what we're talking about next week because I hadn't officially told you what my pick was.
What are we talking about?
David, next week we're going to be talking about The Full Monty.
Sick.
A movie where working class blue collar dudes take their clothes off for money.
Fuck
and,
yes.
Yeah, it'll be fun to go back to that one. Both of us have seen it before.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
It's been a long time since I've seen it as well. My mom loves this movie. My mom's a huge fan.
Having spent a lot of time with your mother, as she is directing the show that we're in. Sorry, there's a dog licking my ear right now. Having spent a lot of time with your mother since she's directing the show that we're in, that totally fucking tracks.
Yeah, she loves The Full Monty. So it'll be fun to talk about.
We got Robert Carlyle in that.
Yeah,
We got Mark Addy. Who else is in that fucking thing?
Yeah,
I don't know. One of the 12 British actors that is in every British movie.
But Robert Carlyle, which is big because it'll be his first appearance on our show, and he's one of my faves.
Awesome.
I love Robert Carlyle.
Yeah. Okay, so join us next week for The Full Monty.
Yeah.
In the meantime, spread the word about the show. We love you all so much, and we appreciate your support. Through the good times and the bad, the good movies, and The Judge. As always, later, dipshits.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.